what is wisdom, really? It's one of those huge questions we've all wondered about. Well, today, we're going to dig into it by looking at some of history's most famous wise men and asking, were they actually as wise as we think?
So you know the story, right? The wise men from the East following that star. But let's just pause on that for a second. Have you ever really thought about that title, wise men? What was it about them that earned them that specific name?
Well, for starters, these guys were basically the top scholars of their day. They were a mix of astrologers and priests, experts who could interpret dreams and read sacred texts. Their whole deal was being able to read signs, like that famous star. And you gotta admit, traveling all that way based on a sign, that shows a certain kind of humility, a real search for the truth.
Okay, so if you kind of mash all of that together, you get a pretty decent starting definition for wisdom, right? It's using what you know, what you've been through, and just good judgment to figure out the best thing to do next. It sounds good, it's a solid definition, but spoiler alert, it's not the full picture. Not even close.
And that brings us to our first really big idea. We've got to separate knowledge from true wisdom. They sound like they could be the same thing, but honestly, they operate in completely different ways.
Okay, check out this example. It makes the difference so clear. Knowledge is just having a piece of information, like knowing a dog can be vicious. But wisdom is the application of that knowledge. It's choosing not to provoke the dog. See the difference? Wisdom is the judgment call that turns a simple fact into a smart action. And this idea goes even deeper. See, wisdom isn't just about one good decision. It's judgment that's been shaped and molded by experience over time. It's that uncanny ability to look at a new situation and go, I've seen this movie before, and you spot repeating patterns that most other people just miss. So what's a key ingredient you need to develop that kind of judgment? Humility. It's huge. Our source material makes a really strong point here. Pride is a barrier to wisdom. People who are always talking, who always have to be the smartest person in the room, that actually blocks wisdom. Real wisdom grows when you're listening, when you're open to the idea that, hey, maybe you don't have all the answers. Okay, so we're building a picture here. Wisdom is applied knowledge shaped by experience and humility. But is it something you just have all the time, like a superpower? Well, that leads us to a really interesting twist. The idea that wisdom actually has its limits.
I mean, seriously, think about it. The wisest person you know, are they wise about every single aspect of their life? Probably not, right? And according to the source material we're digging into today, the answer is a definite no.
You see this all the time. Someone can be an absolutely brilliant and wise leader at work, making these incredible, insightful decisions. But then that same person goes home and in their personal life, with their family, they're completely unwise. It just goes to show you, wisdom isn't this one-size-fits-all quality. It can be totally situational. Which brings us right back to where we started, with our wise men. And this is where our source drops a bit of a bombshell. For all their scholarly wisdom in finding the child, they were actually unwise in a massive way. They didn't recognize that their mission wasn't just to visit and drop off gifts, it was to protect him. They gave their presents, and then they just went home.
And that right there highlights something absolutely crucial about wisdom. It has to be adaptable. True wisdom isn't about just following a fixed formula. It's about being able to recognize when the situation has changed and realizing, okay, the old plan isn't going to work here. We need a new approach. So, if adaptability is so important, where does that flexibility come from? This leads us to the absolute core argument of our source. The idea that wisdom actually flows from two very different places inside of us.
Think of it like this. On one side, you've got practical wisdom. This is your intellectual brain. It's driven by logic, weighing pros and cons, and learning from past mistakes. But then on the other side, you have spiritual wisdom. This comes from your gut, your intuition. It's not a calculation. It's a flash of insight, a feeling that just knows what's right.
Let's focus on that practical wisdom first, because it's the one we're all familiar with. A lot of this kind of wisdom is forged in the fire of regret, isn't it? You make a mistake, you feel that painful outcome, and you swear to yourself, okay, I am never doing that again. It's a very conscious, analytical process.
And these mistakes really come in two main flavors. First, you've got the ones where we know it's a mistake, but we do it anyway. Then you've got the other kind, the ones we don't even realize are mistakes until later when we look back with that perfect 20/20 hindsight. In both cases, practical wisdom is what we build from the fallout.
But that logical, mistake-driven wisdom, that's only half the picture. What about that second source? Now we get to explore the much more mysterious world of intuition.
Yeah, this is not a type of wisdom you can force through analysis. It just arrives, suddenly. It's that flash of realization you get in the shower, or in that quiet space between thoughts. It might show up in a dream, or right when you wake up. And crucially, it often appears when we are suffering the most, when we've hit rock bottom.
But here's the challenge, right? We often get this clear, intuitive guidance, and what do? We immediately ignore it. Our rational brain jumps in and starts shouting it down, dismissing it as impractical or impossible or just plain illogical.
And this leads to a really profound way of reframing suffering. The source material puts this in a spiritual context, suggesting that suffering isn't just random pain. Instead, it's a kind of gift that acts as a signal, a cosmic alarm bell, forcing us to recognize when we've gone off course so we can find our way back.
Ultimately, this all brings us to the final synthesis. See, true wisdom isn't a choice between your head and your heart, between logic and intuition. It's the fusion of both. It's about learning to listen to those deep intuitive insights, and then using our intellectual mind to understand them and act on them.
And that leaves us with one final question to chew on. We always assume that wisdom just comes with age, but let's be honest. We've all met older people who aren't very wise, and some surprisingly wise young people. So if it isn't just about time or experience, where does it really come from? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us.